He was eating leftovers alone, cold pasta sealed in an old plastic container, a half-burnt garlic bread from yesterday, and a lukewarm cup of coffee that tasted more like defeat than caffeine. Daniel sat in the corner booth of a small 24-hour diner in downtown Toronto, the kind of place where the lights hummed louder than the customers and where tired souls drifted in during the night looking for warmth, coffee, or maybe just a break from life. The snow outside tapped against the window like impatient fingers, reminding him that winter had fully settled over the city. His jacket was too thin, his wallet too light, and his hopes spread out so thin it barely held together. He was between jobs, between dreams, between the person he wanted to be and the person he feared he was becoming. And on nights like this, when the world felt too heavy, he forced himself to sit in the diner, not because he wanted to eat, but because it was warmer than his apartment, where the heating barely worked and the silence was too loud. He lifted a fork of cold pasta to his mouth and sighed. Nobody looked at him. The waitress wiped a table, the cook flipped something on the grill, and a couple in the corner whispered quietly to each other. Daniel was used to being invisible. But tonight, something felt different. The kind of different you notice before you understand. Out of the corner of his eye, he noticed a woman enter, her hair frizzy from the snow, her coat oversized, the zipper broken, and a baby wrapped in a thin blanket pressed to her chest. She walked unsteadily, as if every step carried 100 pounds of worry. She hesitated before taking another step, her eyes scanning the room with desperation, not for a seat but for help. Real help. She didn't find any. People looked at her for a second, then looked away, pretending they didn't see the tremble in her hands or the way she clutched her child. She approached Daniel's booth slowly, like someone preparing for rejection but hoping for a miracle. He lifted his head, and their eyes met. Her lips were trembling, and she swallowed before speaking. "Please, my baby hasn't eaten all day," she whispered, her voice barely there. "Do you have anything at all?" Daniel froze. The fork slipped from his hand and clattered against the table. Up close, she looked younger than he expected, maybe mid-20s, but life had pressed so much weight onto her that her eyes looked older. The baby in her arms squirmed weakly, letting out a faint cry that didn't sound like hunger, it sounded like exhaustion. Daniel's heart squeezed painfully inside his chest. He knew hunger. He knew the kind that burned the stomach. But he also knew the deeper kind, the kind that settled into your bones when life kept handing you losses. He didn't answer right away, partly because he didn't know what to say, and partly because he didn't know if he even had enough to help. His leftovers were barely enough for him, and his bank account held only 2 digits, one of them a 0. But the look in the woman's eyes, the pleading, the worry, the kind of fear only a parent could understand, crumbled whatever selfishness was left inside him. Without thinking twice, he pushed the pasta container toward her. She looked at it, then at him, her eyes filling with tears. "No, I didn't mean your food," she whispered. "I meant, just anything. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have asked." But he gently pushed it again. "Take it," he said softly. "He needs it more than I do." Her lower lip trembled, and she slowly sat down across from him. She opened the container, and the baby instantly stirred at the smell. Daniel watched as she fed her child tiny pieces of pasta, blowing on each bite to cool it. Her hands still shook, but there was relief in every small motion. The baby's crying softened, then quieted, then finally faded into peaceful sucking noises. Watching them hit Daniel harder than he expected. It made his throat tight and his eyes sting. He didn't want her to notice, so he looked away. "Thank you," she whispered after a minute. "You have no idea what this means." He shook his head. "It's nothing. Any parent in your place deserves help." She gave a small, tired smile. "I'm not even sure I deserve anything anymore." Everything just fell apart. Something in her tone told him she didn't say that lightly. He waited, giving her space to continue if she chose. And slowly, she did. Her name was Emily. She'd moved to Toronto a year earlier with her partner and newborn son, hoping for a fresh start. But life hadn't quite followed the plan. Her partner lost his job, started drinking, started yelling, then left one morning and never returned. She'd worked part-time at a grocery store, but when childcare fell through, she missed shifts and eventually lost the job. She'd been surviving on whatever little savings she had, stretching every dollar, skipping meals, borrowing strollers from neighbors. But today, she'd run out of everything. Out of food, out of money, out of strength. Her last hope was to walk into the warmest place she could find and pray someone would show her mercy. By the time she finished speaking, Daniel felt his own heart heavier than before. Her pain wasn't new to him, it was a reflection of his own. He had come to Toronto for dreams too, to work in film production, to build a future he could be proud of. But the industry didn't care about dreams when bills piled up, and eventually he slipped through the cracks too. He had lost jobs, friends, confidence, everything. And sitting across from someone who understood struggle made him feel seen for the first time in months. He looked at her baby now sleeping peacefully against her chest. "You're doing the best you can," he said. "That counts for something." She shook her head. "Not enough. Not when he's hungry." Daniel glanced out the window. Snow piled higher. The cold looked cruel. Suddenly, something inside him made a decision before he could second-guess it. He stood up. "Come with me," he said. She tensed slightly. "Where?" "Don't worry. Somewhere warm. And safe." She hesitated only a moment. She had no energy to fear someone offering kindness. She followed him outside, and he shielded them from the wind as best as he could. They walked 3 blocks to his building, a worn-down apartment complex whose elevators groaned and whose hallways smelled faintly like old carpet. But it was warm, and it was something. He opened his door, and she stepped inside, surprised at how tidy the small space looked despite how minimal it was. He turned on the small heater and set it near the couch. "You and your baby can stay here for the night," he said. "I'll sleep on the floor." Her eyes widened. "No, I can't ask you to do that." "You didn't ask," he replied with a gentle smile. "I offered." She opened her mouth to argue, but exhaustion overpowered her. She sat on the couch carefully while Daniel went to the kitchen. He checked his cupboards, bare, but he found 1 can of soup and heated it on the stove. When he brought it to her, she blinked like she might cry again. She ate slowly, savoring every warm spoonful, whispering thank you after nearly every bite. Later, as the baby slept wrapped in one of Daniel's blankets, Emily lowered her voice. "You don't even know me," she said. "Why help?" He stared at the dim light flickering from the heater. "Because I know what it feels like to have nobody help when you need it the most. And I promised myself that if I ever had even a little to give, I'd give it." Those words hung in the room like warmth. The night passed quietly. In the morning, Daniel woke early, went downstairs, and bought a small bag of groceries with the last money he had: eggs, bread, a small jar of baby food, and a banana. When he returned, he found Emily sitting upright, baby in her lap, looking apologetic. "I should go," she said softly. "You've done more than enough." Daniel set the groceries on the table. "Eat first, then figure out the rest." Her eyes brimmed again, and she nodded gratefully. After breakfast, she stood near the door, the baby bundled warmly now in Daniel's scarf. "I don't know how to repay you," she whispered. He shook his head. "Just do for someone else one day what I did for you." She gave a small emotional smile, the kind that comes from someone who has been broken but not defeated. Then she left. Daniel closed the door gently, feeling both sad and strangely hopeful. He didn't know if he'd ever see her again. But he knew he'd done something right. 2 weeks later, he got a call from a number he didn't recognize. When he answered, a cheerful voice greeted him. "Hi, is this Daniel? I'm calling from Maplewood Productions. We received your application for a production assistant position, and we'd like to interview you." Daniel blinked, surprised. He had sent that application months ago. He agreed to the interview and hung up, overwhelmed with disbelief. For the first time in a long time, something was going right. He went to the interview nervous but hopeful. The manager smiled warmly at him. "We like people who show heart, not just skill," she said. "And someone here recommended you highly." He frowned. "Who?" She slid a note across the desk. One handwritten sentence read, "He helped me and my baby when no one else would. Please give him a chance, Emily." His chest tightened. He swallowed hard, whispering, she didn't have to do that. But she had, and because of her, he got the job. Not long after, life began to shift, slowly but surely. He stabilized his income, fixed his apartment, bought new winter boots, and treated himself to warm meals. And every time he walked past the diner where he once ate leftovers alone, he thought about that night, the moment everything changed because he listened to a whisper of desperation. Months later, he received another message. Emily wanted to meet and thank him properly. When they met in a small coffee shop, her baby, now healthier, stronger, smiling, reached out toward Daniel instantly. Emily looked healthier too, with a little color back in her cheeks and hope back in her eyes. She told him she'd found shelter, gotten support, and was now taking training courses to work again. "You saved us," she said quietly. Daniel shook his head. "No, you just needed someone to remind you that you still mattered." The baby giggled, grabbing Daniel's finger with surprising strength. Daniel looked at him, then at Emily, and felt something settle inside him, something gentle and bright. "You both saved me, too," he admitted. "I didn't realize how alone I'd been until that night." The snow fell softly outside, not harsh this time, but peaceful. People rushed past the windows, bundled in coats, heading somewhere. But inside the small shop, 3 people sat around a warm table, sharing coffee, baby giggles, and a moment full of quiet gratitude. Life didn't magically fix itself. It didn't erase the hard nights or the pain that had shaped them. But it gave them something else, proof that kindness still existed, that small actions could ripple into life-changing moments, that sometimes the most broken souls find each other at exactly the right time. And sometimes, when a man eats leftovers alone, life sends him a whisper that changes everything. "Please, my baby hasn't eaten all day."